you, Chairman, and all the distinguished members of the Ohio's 133rd General Assembly. I'm from New York, so I talk very fast, so it will accommodate your agenda.
Drug experts are sounding the K2 alarm as well.
They're putting rat poison in this particular compound, and the rat poison is causing people to bleed from their eyes and their ears. So it's really an overwhelming problem that we have to get a handle on.
Mr. Maltz.
Chairman Royce and distinguished members of the committee, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to discuss these important topics for our national security. Chairman Royce, after hearing the news this week, I want to echo Juan's comment. I wanted to congratulate you and your family for an outstanding career in public service and all you've done for our nation. And I know firsthand, as Juan already alluded to, that you were very much the leader behind helping us get Victor Boot and put him in jail.
Thanks, Derek.
I was the agent in charge at the Special Operations Division for, almost 10 years, and I'm in daily contact with all my friends in law enforcement around the globe. I'm very focused in on the threats to this country and how they impact our national security. As you remember, I lost my brother Michael in the U.S. Air Force Pararescue Unit in Afghanistan, so I'm extremely passionate about public safety and national security and accountability.
Derek Maltz, a former head of the Special Operations Division at the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me in the arena. Derek Maltz, the war on drugs has been a massive $1 trillion failure, has it not? For more than 4 decades, all it's given us is more war and more drugs and helped the U.S. produce, I think, the world's biggest prison population.
Well, first of all, I never called it a war, number one. Number two is that if you lost a loved one to this epidemic, then you would be very happy that the DEA and other law enforcement agencies are out there trying to enforce the law. Unfortunately, this particular problem requires much more than law enforcement. And quite frankly, it's been neglected for many years, and hopefully we can get it back on track.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Patriot Show. I'm your host, Anthony Stephen Malone. Today I have a very special guest with us, Derek Maltz, former Director, U.S. Department of Justice Special Operations Division. Hello Derek, how are you?
How are you, Anthony?
I am good, my friend, I am good. Thank you so much for coming on to the Patriot Show. This is a very important interview as well because of what we're going to be speaking about. Some of my viewers would have heard your name but won't know that much about you. Can you give us a little bit about your background, like where you went to university before you became the director?
Yeah, so Anthony, my father was a career dedicated DEA agent in New York and Washington for many years. I came out of college, accounting major, Syracuse University in New York. My father pushed me into this career of law enforcement. So I spent 28 years in the DEA. The last 10 years, I was the director in charge of the DEA Special Operations Division in Northern Virginia. When I got there in 2005, there were 9 agencies. When I left, we built it up to 30 agencies to include the UK, the Canadians, and also the Australians. I also brought in the New York City Police Department representatives because my SOD, as we call it, was a synchronization center of effort to go after transnational organized crime around the globe. And so we had to have the agencies, cooperating, working together, trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Prior to that job, I was in charge of U.S. oldest and largest drug task force in New York City with the NYPD and the New York State Police and DEA going after, global drug trafficking. So I have many years in law enforcement, and now since I retired in 2014, I stay very much involved with the day-to-day trends and emerging crisis that we have around the world with the drug issues and transnational criminals. And I also do some media, for different networks. And I was in Congress, at the U.S. Congress last week. I was in the UK a couple of years ago with the parliamentary people talking about Hezbollah's global money laundering and drug trafficking activities. So try to stay involved, try to put out the messages to help people understand what's developing and what's emerging around the world.
Right. In your, obviously, you've got a vast experience there, and we're not going to be able to cover everything in one interview. But in your experience, what are the biggest obstacles, and how can you see the drug industry that has changed over the past 20 years?
So that's a tough question because there's so many issues. I think sometimes the biggest obstacles we have are our own people, the politicians, the bureaucracy, the lack of resources to fight emerging crime around the world, especially as they're using advanced technology. Some of the laws in our different countries are so antiquated. They go back so many years and nobody's willing to learn and get updated. Meanwhile, a lot of people are using advanced technology every day to communicate with their families and their businesses. And so what we really learned is after 9/11, how closely aligned and connected the transnational criminals are with the terrorist organizations. And what people need to realize is that the terrorist groups have recognized the billions and billions of dollars generated from crime around the world, that having access to that funding helps the terrorists carry out their agendas. So we've seen an increase in the terrorists tapping into criminal activity to, fund their operations. And that's really, really disappointing and disturbing because unfortunately, Anthony, our worldwide terrorism investigators and criminal investigations still operate in silos. And that's not like an attack against any organization. We have some unbelievably hardworking people around the globe in all these different countries and agencies, but it does no good if you're looking at this stuff in a silo. The bad guys are not operating silos. They're operating to destroy our countries. And so that's the most frustrating piece. And you would think 20 years after 9/11, the world would recognize it. And so that's probably the hardest thing for me to deal with on a day-to-day basis is the total integration of bad guys' capabilities as the good guys are still operating in the dark in the old days and the old philosophies how to go after crime. So we have our hands full, but we're trying to get the word out, trying to do better, but it is a little overwhelming at times.
Yeah, it is. All the agencies out there do an incredible job. All the men and women throughout all the law enforcement agencies. It's difficult, and with technology evolving every day, it makes some of law enforcement's work even harder. You touched on something then, the connections between crime, organized crime, international crime, and terrorist networks. A lot now is all interconnected. Can you explain to my viewers a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when the terrorists are sitting back and they no longer have the funding streams like from state-sponsored terrorism, because let's look at Iran as an example. They have so many global conflicts that they're trying to fight, but at the same time, they're under these worldwide sanctions. So they're not generating money like they used to, and they have limited budgets. So they can't provide unlimited funding to Hezbollah as they're trying to carry out conflicts in Syria, conflicts around the world, and then also keep up their weapons and their missiles that they want to have ready to go in case something breaks with Israel. And so they need funding to operate. They can't continue to sustain operations without funding. So they've recognized they have to tap into the global drug crisis as an example. But it's not just drugs, it's counterfeiting as a big one, right? Human trafficking, child exploitation, like arms trafficking, right? Kidnapping, extortion. It's all of these crimes that generate billions, literally billions. And the bad guys are starting to recognize, like in the DEA, we've been positioned around the world for so many years. So back in the day, when Pablo Escobar was blowing up planes and, kidnapping judges and killing judges and families and prosecutors and journalists, DEA was in the battle of narco-terrorism back in many, many years now. This isn't anything new. But I think now what's new is that groups like Hezbollah, groups like, Al-Qaeda, ones that are easily recognizable around the world, they're starting to tap into, the proceeds of crime. And now it's becoming more complicated for the good guys, because unless you're working together in these real task force environments, sharing all the information, you're not going to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And that's where it becomes dangerous. And that's what I've seen over the years. So it's this convergence of crime and terrorism. So it's kind of like, I had an old saying, right? Organized crime, disorganized police. And that's not meant to knock the police. It's the system. It's the bureaucracy. It's not the hard men and women working around the world. They put in the effort. They sacrifice their family lives. They're doing their jobs, but it's the system that's, outdated. And that's where we have to get, some movement.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. The men and women and the teams, agencies are working so hard, but sometimes politics can get in the way of a lot. Obviously, we've seen that in the past. In your experience, the pipelines between countries, the pipelines are important because they move it for human trafficking, drugs, narcotics, and the weapons, high-value targets. Do you think in law enforcement, if they were to focus a lot on that as well, on the pipelines, closing them down, what's your opinion of that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the pipelines are huge because all of these transnational criminal networks, they need their people in position to carry out the operations. Without the people, you can't do the job, right? And so they're moving people, they're under the disguise of like asylum seekers and stuff like that. I know Europe is inundated, all these different countries like Germany, as an example, they have massive ton quantities of cocaine that are coming into the ports in Hamburg, for an example. And now they need, the cartels need their people there, right? Hezbollah needs their people there because they have to move the money into drugs. They have to be set up for operations. It's all about making billions of dollars. So studying the pipelines and understanding the current trends and the movements is critical if you want to make a dent in these operations.
Yeah, it is. I think the pipelines now are so important, identifying them and closing them down as well. It's not going to be an easy thing to achieve that. The Hezbollah organization, over the past 20 years, they have grown phenomenally now. Their tentacles are now went worldwide within the crime networks, not just in Europe, but in Central America as well, with the cartels. Can you explain a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah, I mean, look, Hezbollah is one of the most technically capable terrorist organizations in the world. They've been going after Americans and European, for so many years, blowing up embassies, blowing up buildings, like the Beirut bombing 30 something years ago, right? And so this is nothing new. But what is new is, like I said, they've recognized the amount of money involved in crime. And so they're using their people around the world to start integrating with the criminal organization. So in the DEA, we had a major operations project, Cassandra, which was our worldwide initiative to watch how Hezbollah was more and more involved in Europe and South America and all over the world, Africa, United States, putting together, their people, putting their people in place around the world, as you said, the pipelines of people. And then they started getting involved with the Mexican cartels and the Colombian cartels and moving literally billions of dollars and tons of cocaine. So what the trend that we learned, Anthony, was multi-ton quantities of cocaine leaving South America, going into West Africa. They use West Africa because there's so much corruption on the ground in these countries. They utilize the government officials and they pay them off millions of dollars and they protect the cocaine that's sitting in these warehouses. Then they get people to move stuff through North Africa, through Mauritania, Mali. They're all controlled by these radical groups that are all tapping into this, making money over it for storage and for security. Then the dope is getting into Europe and then it's being sold around the world, not just in Europe, but the bad guys in South America realized that if I could sell a kilogram of cocaine for, let's say, 40, 50, 60,000 US equivalent in Europe, or I could sell it in Australia for 150,000, that's a lot more money. And I'm not going to get extradited to go to US prison like a lot of these kingpins. So what's happening is they're using West Africa as a transshipment point for the world of cocaine trafficking, right? They still do their major ton quantities into ports in Rotterdam and other places in Belgium and stuff like that. But the reality is that they're starting to recognize the amount of money. So we had one scheme that we identified with used cars being purchased with drug money in America, and then the cars were being exported to West Africa and being sold for a profit. But all the money was getting commingled to support Hezbollah. And it was being, monies routed through American bank accounts and banks in Lebanon to support Hezbollah's activities and Iran's master plan, right? And so it's this convoluted, very complex web of bad guys all working together to support Hezbollah's activity. But we have the same thing going on now with China, as an example. China, involved with the precursor chemicals for methamphetamine and fentanyl, killing Americans at record levels. But now they're providing the money laundering services business for the cartels, which is brand new. So there's all these trends that are building. But with Hezbollah, we actually had an effort to put a dent in this operation and to cripple them. But unfortunately, we couldn't even get the U.S. agencies to all cooperate fully because of what I talked about before. The protecting of their kingdoms and their information sharing was being, they're very, very careful on sharing terrorist information, different agencies, and not just in the U.S., but in Europe as well. But we did have a very successful operation going on with multiple countries in Europe in 2016, and we arrested some really significant operatives, but there's a hell of a lot more work to be done.
Yeah, it's a very complex. I just wanted my viewers who didn't know a lot about Hezbollah or the criminal element and the terrorist element is now intermingled. A lot of this is, I don't know if it's state-sponsored terrorism from Iran, but Iran is pulling the strings of Hezbollah. They're giving them a free trade route from Afghanistan through Iran into Iraq, Syria, straight over to the Mediterranean as well. So Iran is actually helping. Although I don't know if that's politically correct to say that, but it's the fact, isn't it? What is your opinion? What things can be put, or what programs can be put into place to help stem the narcotics?
So first of all, let me just go back to something, just to give you an example. In 2008, the United States Homeland Security Director put out a message to the world that Hezbollah made Al-Qaeda look like the minor leagues, right? Yeah. And we also had some of our, leaders in our Department of Defense putting out messages about this global trend in the Western Hemisphere of Hezbollah working with Venezuela, working with the terrorists in Colombia, trying to get a presence in the Western Hemisphere. But so the first thing that has to be done is we have to break down the walls between the crime and the terrorist sections. If we don't do that, then everybody in the world is at risk because they are advancing quickly and we are still like operating from 20, 30 years ago when it comes to information sharing on these cases that cross over between terrorism and crime. And again, that's not anybody's fault. It's the actual system and a lack of leadership. We have to get the leaders in the different countries to start mandating the full cooperation. So Anthony, in America, we had a famous gangster, Al Capone. He was a mass murderer. He was operating, killing people all over America, specifically out of Chicago. The way he was taken off the battlefield was through an IRS tax charge, right? Yep. So by utilizing a tax violation, they were able to arrest him and put him in jail so he couldn't continue to do mass murder. Well, it's the same thing with a terrorist. If you have an Al-Qaeda terror cell or a Hezbollah terror cell, you might not be able to infiltrate them on the terrorism business, but if you could get them operating in some criminal enterprise, utilizing all the tools of national power, then you could take them off the playing field. They can't carry out the terrorist act, right? So this is what we're trying to teach, right? So we have a lot of effective, tools in all of our toolboxes. We have a lot of great patriots in all of our countries. If we could put it together in a task force environment and use, like what they say, a whole of government approach, right? Then we can be a lot more effective. But the other thing is we have to recognize the advancement in the technology that the bad guys are using and the good guys don't have access to. So like in America, and I know it's the same thing in Europe as well, if you're trying to do a court authorized intercept on somebody's communications, if they're using encrypted apps, which they're all using, you can't get the content to present in a judicial, court case, let's say, right? So it's very disturbing and it's very alarming that lawmakers can't understand that, because that's something that impacts everyone in the world, not just, drug trafficking or, organizations. It's all crime. It's all terror. They're using advanced technology, but we're still, trying to protect the citizens' privacy. Now, nobody in law enforcement is looking to invade privacy. They're looking to maintain their abilities to go after bad guys. And that's the problem. We're not looking for more. We're looking to stay in the game as law enforcement professionals. And that's what nobody seems to understand. So last week, I participated in the United States Congress, and this came up, and I made it clear that we're losing capabilities. We're going dark, as they say. And if we go dark, the whole country's at risk. The whole world is at risk. And that's kind of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think that is a very important point you brought up there. I think the public don't realize just how advanced some of these networks are. And I understand 99% of any intelligence work, any work or missions that are on the go have got to be kept secret. If anyone understands it, I understand that. And the public have got to respect that. But they also have got to understand that communication as well, not just between the public, but between governments and agencies internationally, is very important. If there's a jigsaw and we're all holding a piece of it, unless we all get together and put it down on the table, we don't get the overview. That's exactly one of my concerns. People using intelligence for politics as well. I've come across it a couple of times, which I don't think politics have got any right to interfere in intelligence or enabling the agencies or law enforcement to do their job. It's difficult enough as it is. The big thing, I think, is the tech companies. The tech companies are making all this technology. They must be aware that the bad guys are getting this and using it against us. Do you think the tech companies should work more closely with law enforcement, not to invade anyone's privacy, but to stop the networks, the terrorists and the criminal organizations?
Yeah, I mean, look, the tech companies are in the business to make money. They've done a phenomenal job. We all use, our Google phones, our Apple phones, and it's really awesome to stay connected in the world. We all love the privacy. We want the privacy with our financial information. We get all that. But the tech companies have some super smart people that work for them. They can also figure out ways where we can compromise and just work together. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. It's not like the tech companies are separate from America, for example, right? If something bad happens, we're all in this together, right? When 9/11 hit, everybody was devastated and shocked. We didn't care about, your race, your color, your political preference. It didn't matter. It was all Americans, right? And it's the same thing in your country, right? Yeah. And so the tech companies, in my view, should come to the table and start developing, situations to compromise. We're not saying to roll over and give the big government everything that they want, but we're saying that you have to understand first what the government is facing and what the public faces as a national security crisis, and then kind of come up with ways of compromising it. And that's just the way it is. I don't understand why that hasn't been happening already, but that's something that we have to work on.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that one. It's so important now, because if we let the terrorists or the bad guys get too far ahead of the game, we're not going to catch them up. So we're going to be forever trying to play catch up, when really this is the West, this is America, this is Europe, this is the UK. We should be ahead of the game. This is our technology they're using against us. Western technology used against the West by other countries, other organizations. I think the time's going to have to come where someone's going to have to wake up and think about that. Western technology used against us. And that is something people are going to have to wake up and have a look at.
Right. So on that point, Anthony, just so you know, sometimes I feel guilty when I criticize other governments, like for other things, like for example, in our country, the whole Southwest border, Mexico crisis we're dealing with the immigrants coming in and stuff like that. It's hard for me to be critical of Central American and Mexican leaders when our own country is not stepping up to the plate and taking care of these things that are in our backyard. So you're 100% right. You know, when you live in a glass house, you don't want to throw stones. And that's kind of how I feel about some of this stuff with technology.
Yeah, it's a bit of a, we're not knocking anyone on this interview. A lot of people are trying really hard. All we're saying is maybe a lot more cooperation between the big tech companies and law enforcement would actually help.
Right. I mean, I have a saying, this is not any longer a whole of government approach. It's a whole of America approach for us. We need the private citizens to be involved. They have solutions. They have the technology. They have smart people that care about the country. Yeah, they want to make money. That's fine. They'll still make money, but they want to also be safe, and they want their kids to be safe and their grandkids to be safe. So we're in this together.
Yeah, everyone's in this now. This isn't just a case of law enforcement. This is a case of all governments everywhere. They need to have a think about this one on how to move forward. Everything is evolving. We need to evolve like the terrorist organizations are as well. In your experience, which is vast, what future threats do you think we could face, not just now, but in the next 10 years as well?
So the biggest threat, which keeps me up at night, is this ongoing threat on the cyberspace, right? Because I look at the US and I look over the years, many people in law enforcement never were trained properly, were never provided the education on the emerging and the advancement of technology. So if the bad guys are using this technology for any type of crime, and I'm not even talking about stealing identities and shutting down electrical grids, I'm just talking about just utilizing advanced technology for day-to-day operations, right? So law enforcement's a little bit behind in that area, and not just in America, but all over the world. Unfortunately, law enforcement tends to, maintain and control what they know instead of embracing the unknown. They're afraid. And so they're not being provided the support from leadership in the government. They don't get the resources, the training. So cyberspace is what really, really concerns me, because I don't feel that we're very prepared. And then if you start looking at the advanced cyber criminals with the cryptocurrencies and the people in North Korea, China, and Russia and other parts of the world that want to shut down our power supply and our banking industry, that's really, really scary. So to me, that's like one of the top threats, if not the top threat. But of course, we have the movement of this pipeline of people all around the world. They're positioned now to do things in our own countries. They're hiding in our countries, like we used to call that sleeper cells, right? Yeah. And we have that all around the world, not just in America, but in Europe. They're ready to go. So if something happens in, let's say, Israel between Iran, and then they give the word and the order, people start, stepping up the game. So we have this internal, crisis of people, because we have limited border security in many countries, right? Right now, we have unprecedented levels of immigrants just walking across our border from Mexico, just coming into the country. We don't even know who they are. And they're special interest aliens coming in from around the world that are paying lots of money to get into the country. They're paying the cartels, lots of money, thousands of dollars to get into America. So why do they want to come to America? What's their motive? What's their intent? And that's what we all have to worry about, this internal threat of mass movements of people.
Yeah, you're very right. America's got a problem with its southern border and other borders as well. We have got that over in Europe and in England, in the United Kingdom. We have got a big problem with illegals coming in, and we don't know how many they actually is coming in or who they are. But
exactly. You don't know what you don't know, Anthony.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know what we don't know, but it is a concern, and I think governments need to look at these pipelines very carefully now, because it's all interconnected and has been for a long time. You touched on something there, emerging technologies. That is the technologies that are coming up now. China seems to be playing quite a big part of this as well, with all their technical abilities. What can you tell us about that?
Well, look, I'll give you a simple example. So for years in the United States, the Hispanic organizations in South America, Central America, and Mexico had their confidants in America to do their money laundering operations, right? So if they sold $1 million worth of drugs and they had $1 million in cash in New York City, they would set up a deal to pick up the money and launder the money through bank accounts back home to whatever country, right? Now the Chinese have recognized that they could pick up the cash for the drug traffickers. They could set up command and control in Mexico City. Once the money is picked up, they don't have to put the cash into any bank accounts. What they do is they use their smartphones and they move money from one Chinese bank account to another. They don't put any cash into the banking system, so you can't track it. So the guy in China gets the $1 million in his bank account. Then he could go and order up $1 million worth of consumer goods, sneakers, computers, toys, whatever it may be, and then load up a container and ship $1 million worth of goods from China to, let's say, Mexico, right? Then they sell the goods maybe for $3 million in Mexico. So everybody makes money. The Chinese businesses, the cartels get their money back. Everything's been successfully laundered. And we can't infiltrate anything because they're using WeChat, which is a Chinese, communication app, which is all encrypted. And then they use their banking apps, which we can't infiltrate. So we're totally in the dark as they're moving millions of dollars back to these transnational criminals that are then making more methamphetamine, making more cocaine, making more heroin and fentanyl. And then the world is getting inundated with the drugs. So they almost have impunity to operate because of technology. And so like in America, it's not like we have like thousands and thousands of cops in America that can speak fluent Chinese or have informants that are going to infiltrate these Chinese. Now we're doing much better. We have a lot of good cases, but this is something that's like out of control, but it's all run by Chinese nationals.
Right. That is, obviously a lot of my viewers won't be aware of that. They'll be like,
no, I mean, people don't realize they think China, big national security threat, but they don't realize their active role in so many aspects of the drug crisis, not just in America, but in Europe as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a problem. It is expanded, and technology is making it very difficult to get for Western agencies to get ahead of this at the moment. What do you think the answer to, well, there isn't an answer, and there's sure as hell not a quick fix for that. How do you think the West can counter that?
Well, I'll give you a good example only because this one still bothers me so much. And it just gives you an example on how dysfunctional the government agencies can be if we don't have the right leadership. So in 2014, one of the highest decorated admirals in the US military, Admiral McCraven, who was running the Special Operations Command at the time, he recognized all these transnational crime threats. He also recognized that the law enforcement agencies needed some leadership. So he hosted a big meeting down at the Special Operations Command in Tampa, Florida, to get everyone together on the biggest threats to the country. One of the threats was Lebanese Hezbollah, right? And we pulled everyone together. We shared all our information. And then we left with a plan that we were going to work together, and Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, DOD was going to all come together and work these threats. Well, shortly thereafter, it just kind of fell apart. Everyone went back to doing their own thing. When Admiral McCraven retired, we didn't have like leaders stepping up at the time. Law enforcement still continued. They still did the best that they could. Eventually, the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, he formed a new task force and put some leadership on the issue. But to be honest with you, it's still not the way it needs to be. I mean, we have directives out of our White House from our president, not just President Trump, not just President Obama. I'm sure President Biden is going to come up with a similar directive. But these directives, Anthony, they don't mean anything unless leaders hold people accountable. So the accountability piece is something that everyone talks about, but that's what's missing. If we get the accountability, we get the engagement and the focus on the true prioritized threats, we can make a difference. We will make a difference. The problem is, if you don't have that, everyone does their own thing. And, we're much better if we work together, right? Everyone knows that, but that's just not happening. Remember, I have a unique perspective to make that statement because I worked 10 years in the hub of the US government's coordination center for criminal investigations around the world. And we had other countries as well. And we shared with a lot of different counterparts around the world. This isn't unique to just the US, it's unique to worldwide leaders. And I find the same common problem. So until that is fixed, which is easy with the right leaders, right? Then we're going to be back in the same boat. But unfortunately, as the crime and terror is emerging so quickly, we're going to be further behind.
I think what has been quite concerning is what we've seen with the likes of terrorist organizations at one time who were not working together, likes of Al-Qaeda, the Yaqani network, Hezbollah, and other Iranian proxies, and now we're all working together, sharing intelligence, sharing safe houses. Again, I bring this point up, the pipelines, they're sharing the pipelines. Fact, it's happening. So now you've got what was multiple organizations having a go at the West, for want of a better word, which is a national security issue. They've now got all their ducks in a row and they're working together. So my question is obviously to other people, if the terrorists can do this, why can't Western governments and agencies do exactly the same?
Right, we can do it with leadership. Remember, convergence is super dangerous to the world, and it's a recipe for disaster, and that's what's happening. We must preserve the rule of law. That has to be a priority, right? But we have to have leaders recognize that, this is an issue that we have to have agencies working together. And that's in my opinion, a very simple thing. It's just not being done for whatever reason. Can't explain it. I wish I had the answer. Yeah. It's certainly not because of the lack of effort. There's so many hardworking people, and it makes me sad to see, there's an old saying, right? You're supposed to work smarter, not harder. Yeah. And we're working very hard, but we're not using our heads, Anthony.
Do you think, in your opinion, that a new intelligence center or a new task force, multi-agency, multi-country, that was, if something like that was set up, do you think that could be a good step in the right direction?
Of course, Anthony, that's what I built up in the US. I worked hard. Like, look, my brother died in Afghanistan. I'm very passionate about national security. And here's the thing. When I got to the place, I inherited a very good foundation at the Special Operations Division because of really good leaders before me. I was able to get the support from my agency and the Department of Justice to build it up from only 9 agencies, working with 30 agencies. And like I said, multiple countries. So we were on the right track because we had some really good people, really smart investigators and analysts, and we had really good cooperative efforts. Unfortunately, then people started getting insecure and jealous that this SOD operation was becoming too much in the limelight, and we were taking down bad guys around the world, Victor Bout, Mansa Qasar, these kingpins in Afghanistan, bringing them back to face justice. Time magazine had stories where defense attorneys were calling us the Navy SEALs of the DEA. And then unfortunately, all these weak and insecure cowards in the government started taking shots and undermining the operation. Instead of building it up and using it as a foundation for more and more cooperation to keep America safe, they actually wound up hurting the place, which is something you can't even describe, Anthony. You could see that my blood pressure gets up on this one because we worked very hard. So yeah, to answer your question, of course you could do that. Then we have Interpol, we have Europol, we have operations in Europe that have some of the same principles. I work very closely with the Brits, sharing intelligence, working together, building up these things. So you have these operations. Now we just got to closer align and get the leadership to continue pushing this stuff in the right direction. Instead, we're undermining our own successes, which is really, really bad.
Yeah, I think a lot of things that have happened over the past 10 years, 15 years, where the politics interfered, and I want to use that word, interfered, and the leadership has got to pull everything together. Also, there is
100%.
there is no room in such a grouping for egos of agencies. It doesn't matter who takes the bad guy out. It's a case of he's taken off the board. End of. That's what people have got to understand. It isn't a case of jostling for positions for agencies either. Everyone comes together, and we need to be able to fight the threats that are out there, because we are behind the curve on this. And I can speak from experience, the Akani network aligning with Hezbollah is a problem, a big one. So I hope when people are watching this interview, it's a wake-up call, because I think
Absolutely. I mean, it's like you said, you described it perfectly. Nobody's looking for credit. When we built up the SOD platform, we weren't looking for credit. We were looking to keep people safe, right? Trying to unite the great patriots in America to work with the other really hardworking agencies around the world to try to protect people, not just in America, but around the world. It's like the good guys versus the bad guys, right? Good versus evil. And that's what we have to do. And unfortunately, the egos get in the way, the bureaucrats get in the way, and the resources are not there. And then we waste resources on things. We build up redundant capabilities. So one of my big complaints, Anthony, is that we built up this special operations division. It was even in the US president's order on transnational crime as an agency operation to help coordinate and synchronize efforts. But yet we constantly have people trying to reinvent and build their own centers and build their own capabilities, when we already spent years of lessons learned to get where we were at SOD. So it's the same thing in Europe. I hear it all the time talking to people. And honestly, don't take this the wrong way, but Europe is even further behind in a lot of the laws. At least in America, we have really good, robust laws to prosecute and convict people for violating US laws, conspiracy as an example.
Yeah.
You know, conspiracy to commit terrorism and other laws like that. And so in Europe, they still have countries you can't even use informants to do the job. How the hell are you supposed to infiltrate global criminal networks and you can't even use informants? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you've that's a very good, actually it is a cracking point there. Europe is behind on this one. There's no ifs or buts, they actually are. The United Kingdom seems to be doing quite well, doing a good job. They could do a lot more here.
Hey, Anthony, on a side note, I want to tell you something here, because back in the early days before 9/11, before special operations was a very popular, operation, we worked really closely with the Brits, the UK customs. We worked with them. We were sharing intelligence, because the same command and control leaders in Colombia that are dumping cocaine in America are the same ones dumping it into the UK. And the leadership back in the day with the UK, and then with SOCA, and then the NCA, they were really good partners for us, because we shared really valuable intelligence. So I want you to know that, like, we work very closely with them.
Yeah, the National Crime Agency, which was SOCA back in the day, incredible set of individuals, and they've done some very good work in Afghanistan as well on the pipelines.
Absolutely.
Again, politics got involved in certain aspects of that.
Who's in charge? Who's getting the credit? We're the experts, and the fighting over that stuff. Yeah, again, lack of leadership, Anthony.
Well, I think now because the Middle East is a massive issue and a problem moving forward, and China is as well. It's a clear threat to the national security, not just of the United States, but of Europe and the United Kingdom. So I think people getting their heads together now, and leadership, which is important, getting their heads together. Now, all these government advisors are great, all right? But they need to get some people advising the government who have actually, one, have been to some of the countries they're talking about, and have got some experience in dealing with different agencies. Because some of the government advisors who I've spoken to over the past week, they leave a lot to be desired. Not all of them, just a couple of them. So the government, the leadership needs the right advice. That's important. Categorically, the right advice, then the leadership can make the right decisions on that. The pipelines, I know we're coming back to it again. It's a very important thing now, because with the terrorist networks now working together and aligning themselves, the West now has got a threat now, which is a credible one against us. So I'm hoping that the leaderships now will get their heads together and start thinking about how to move forward. If you had a message to any of the leaderships, any countries, anywhere in the world about what we are speaking about now, what little bit of advice would you give them now?
Well, there's an old saying, right? You can't build a 100-story skyscraper unless you have a solid foundation, right? And the problem we have now in trying to fight these very sophisticated transnational criminal and terrorist organizations is they are super strong, super technical, and super resourced. Our foundation has the opportunity to be grown over the years, but there's a lot of cracks in it right now. And the cracks are coming because we don't have leadership directing people what to do. So the most fundamental thing is to get the workers in line and hold the violators accountable. If we do something like that, then we will have results like the world has never seen. Because I know in the US, and I can speak for the UK as well, we have some unbelievable, people that have worked over the years with lots of experience that were on the ground, that could come up with capabilities to shut down chemical flow, shut down the financial networks, and really disrupt and dismantle their ability to move people and to move their weapons. And we can do it. I'm very optimistic, but we have to have the leadership. So that's kind of what's missing. I'd also say that if you want to step up and be the head of an agency, then you better be ready to be responsible. It's not just the title that you're getting. It's not just a fancy, path for a future job. It's about responsibility, right? You can't have the title without the responsibility. And unfortunately, there's a lot of responsibility now. So we got to hold people accountable. We have to be very, very specific on accountability for results. We can't just have fake statistics. We have to have real results, and we have to see progress. And if we don't see progress, we have to regroup and reorganize and just get on the track. But we have to have somebody running the operation, somebody that has the passion and the experience to do it, and then hold them accountable.
Right. Derek, absolutely, totally agree with that one. That's a very powerful message, very accurate, very candid, and it needs to be listened to. If anyone's got any questions, or if any of my friends want to send me a private message or an email, you know how to get all the media. The information will be on the bottom of the interview. Any questions you've got for Derek as well, you can email me. I'll get them over to Derek as well, because Derek has got a lot of experience here. He's not talking out of a textbook. He's been there, seen it, and he literally has got the t-shirt, ladies and gentlemen. So that's all I'm going to say on that one. Derek, I'm going to close the interview down in a minute or so. Thank you so much for coming on. It's a very important interview, and we've only just touched on a couple of the issues there. Like we've scraped the tip of the iceberg on that one. But I'd just like to say, and I very rarely get to say this, thank you for your service as well. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. It's nice to speak to somebody that's been on the ground, that understands the consequences of status quo, and also, and probably most important, is what you're doing and trying to help veterans and trying to support the men and women around the world that are putting their lives on the line. I fully support that, and anything I can do to help you, please let me know.
Derek, thank you so much for that. If you can hold on the line for a second, would you like to say anything else to the viewers?
No, we're all good. Thank you, Anthony.
Right. If you can hold on the line, Derek, for 2 minutes, I'm just going to close the interview down. Right, everybody, thank you for watching the Patriot Show. It's been emotional. It's also been very informative as well. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for another minute or so, and watch some trailers, adverts for veteran-owned companies, both in the United States and across the United Kingdom as well. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Tune in next time on The Patriot Show.